The Gamecocks road to the championship continues. This is Andrew Lyon from Gamecocks Digest and Locked On Gamecocks podcast. Check both of those out. And Andrew, we expected the Gamecocks to be in Dallas for the Final Four, and no surprise, they are there, and they've done it in pretty dominating fashion.
Absolutely, Reggie. Obviously, the expectations were quite high for this team coming into this year, returning the majority of the pieces that led this squad to a national championship this past year. And somehow, they've probably surpassed even those expectations, coming into the Final Four with an undefeated mark, having toppled every single opponent up to this point in the season. Obviously, a tough battle with Maryland Terrapins in the Elite Eight, but of course, heading to the Final Four, you got a really good team in the Iowa Hawkeyes, led by Caitlin Clark, who just won the Naismith Memorial National Player of the Year award. And so, there's no question that, the Gamecocks, they're only 2 steps away from claiming a second straight national title, but they still got a lot of work that needs to be done over the weekend to accomplish that feat.
I don't want to date myself, but the Gamecocks really remind me of the Lakers back in the day when they had all those great players coming off the bench, like Bob McAdoo and Michael Thompson. They would wear you down with Showtime, and then the guys would come off the bench and they wouldn't miss a beat. And clearly, Dawn Staley's got that same amount of weapons on the bench. She can just look down and say, okay, you, and there's no drop-off.
No, there really isn't. I mean, you look at the front court, of course, Camila Cardoso, that 6'7" height that she brings, but also the touch that she has around the basket can help clean up any misses on the offensive end. And then you've got other players like Bree Hall, who's kind of like the same mold as Bree Beal, who can be effective both on the offensive and defensive end. And then you have other players that can also jump in, like you said, and there's not really much of a drop-off. And that's the big difference this year with Dawn Staley's squad this year, is they really do go 8, 9, 10, maybe even 11 players deep. And there's just not really any other team in women's college basketball this year that can say that, and that's why they're undefeated at this point heading into the Final Four.
Yeah, certainly are. Now, you look at what Pat Summitt did at Tennessee, and then Gino at UConn, and now it's Dawn Staley's turn to take the mantle as having the elite program in the country. It's really, really amazing what she's been able to accomplish. And I can remember, I was thinking about this today, when she first came to South Carolina, obviously she had to implement her style, her philosophy. It took a year or so, but boy, has things really taken off.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, Dawn has built South Carolina to a point where now it is almost self-sustainable, and she could go out there and get any player that really she wants and her staff wants. And if Dawn ends up winning this national championship, it would be her third in the last 6 years, which would be more than Gino Auriemma and Kim Mulkey and Tara Vanderveer combined. And those are sort of the 3 titans of the sport. They have been for decades now. And so to say something like that, it would be an extraordinary accomplishment for Dawn Staley. And of course, I know the first 2 mean just as much to her, but this one, I think, especially with this special group of freshies, as they like to call themselves, would be even more special, I think, to Dawn Staley.
Elia Boston, I would think she will go down as the most decorated athlete in Gamecock athletics history. With all due respect to Asia Wilson, the Heathwood Hall grad, but Elia's got a chance to walk away with 2 national championships.
Yeah, and Elia, I mean, ever since she stepped on the floor for South Carolina, she has been one of the preeminent players in all of women's college basketball. I mean, what she has done on both ends of the floor, and especially the way that she has grown. She was somebody that, of course, was a double-double machine as soon as she started her career in Columbia, but, working out with Tim Duncan in the offseason a couple times and working on her footwork and the nuances of the game of basketball. That's how Elia Boston has really separated herself. And, of course, like you mentioned, you still got to give Asia Wilson credit because she was the first one to ever do it here at South Carolina. She was an in-state player, which, of course, means so much to Gamecock fans. But Elia Boston has taken that and somehow elevated the bar and ran with it. So it's quite amazing what she has done. And, of course, if she does end up leaving South Carolina, not taking that extra COVID year, she will go down, no doubt about it, as one of the greatest athletes to ever play, not just at South Carolina, but in her entire sport.
Well, certainly team chemistry is very important, and it seems like the Gamecocks have all the ingredients for a second consecutive national championship, and we'll see if they can put it all together in Dallas. He is Andrew Lyon from the Locked On Gamecocks podcast and Gamecocks Digest. Andrew, thanks for coming in, and the Gamecocks road to the championship will continue right after this.